Hi, welcome to Android. Today we'll be discussing about broadcast receivers. So, very important concept because this is one of the top four pillars of the Android when we discuss about. And when we started Android session, we might have mentioned that in Android there are four very most important thing. One is called activity, other is called service. Then comes the concept called receiver, and that is broadcast receiver. And data storage. These are kind of a thing which has been designed from scratch, and it is very important concept for all of this. So today's we'll be discussing about broadcast receiver. Now, when we go into broadcast receiver, first thing to understand is what is broadcast, and then we'll understand that what is a receiver. So the question is, what is broadcast? Okay. Now, once we understand what is broadcast, it is much easier for us to understand what is broadcast receiver. Broadcast is nothing but a mechanism where somebody is broadcasting and telling all the components in the Android phone that something happened. Okay, so it is like a uh, list subscriber and publisher model. If you are aware of subscriber and publisher model, so there is a model in software world we call a subscriber and publisher model. What it means is that there is somebody doing the publishing and somebody is subscribing to those publications, and whenever new publication happen, all the subscribers get it. So the same thing happened that somebody is broadcasting. So let us assume that uh, this component is broadcasting component, and here we have broadcast receivers. Okay, now broadcast receivers, it is quite possible that there are multiple broadcast receiver for same broadcast. Let us assume we have three different broadcast receiver and somebody is broadcasting. Now what it could be, like this one, broadcast receiver has registered, and how do they subscribe and publish? It goes through a concept called action. So there is something called action. So we'll call it action. Okay. So now we'll call it action A. So what happens is that this broadcast component, he is broadcasting this component, this action to the whole world. So this component is broadcasting an action A, and these broadcast receiver are listening for few action. He says, I am interested in a broadcast of action A. He is interested in broadcast of action B. He is interested in broadcast of action A. What it means is, whenever this broadcasting component will broadcast an action which has happened, something has happened, a broadcast receiver A will call it receiver A, receiver B, and receiver C. Okay. Now what it means is that when broadcasting component is broadcasting an action A, there are three different broadcast receivers which are registered to listen for different types of actions. So receiver A listens for action A, receiver B listens for action B, receiver C listens for action A again. It means that when that broadcast happen, these two guys will get triggered. These two guys will get triggered. Okay, so that is basically the concept of somebody broadcasting and somebody receiving. Now, what kind of a component is this guy, broadcasting guy? What kind of a component is this guy? So here it could be an activity. Activity can broadcast. From an activity you can broadcast. From a service you can broadcast. Both of them are capable to send a broadcast. And how do they broadcast? The method is send broadcast action A. Very simple. Okay. So what it means is that either you are inside an activity code or inside a service code and you want to broadcast something happen, you have to just say send broadcast action A, and Android system itself will broadcast to all the components in your phone. Now, all the broadcast receiver in your phone. But does this broadcast, and these components are not activity or service, they are a special type of classes. So what it means is these are not activity or service. They are a special class called broadcast receiver, a special class called receiver. Okay. Now what it means is that from inside an activity code or any service code, you can just use the method send broadcast and give an action. Android will broadcast it to all the broadcast receiver. But remember, here the receiving party is a special class called receiver. Receiving party is not an activity. And what is this? This is nothing but an intent you have created. This, you don't pass it like this. Actually what you do is that in real one, this is an intent action. This is the intent action. Okay. Now, just to refresh it, first thing is that here we have a activity service, and this activity, it could be an activity, it could be a service, and this is a broadcasting component. Sorry, this is a broadcasting component, and it could be an activity, it could be a service. It will create a intent action, let us call it action A, and then use the method send broadcast to broadcast the action. Now once the action is broadcasted, There are various receivers in your mobile phone who is registered through Android manifest.xml file, in which you have mentioned that receiver A is listening for action A, receiver B is listening for action B, receiver C is listening for action A. So whenever action A is broadcasted, this one and this one get triggered. These things, broadcasting component could be an activity or service, but these classes are not activity or service. They are special classes called receiver. So that is what is the concept, of very simple concept. There is not much, and that is what we call it, broadcasting an action. And that action, every time when I say action, you understand that as an intent action.